All right, and welcome back to the Joy Link, where we empower ourselves and others to expand in joy. I'm your host, Brian, along with our co-host, Julia. Julia, how are you?
I'm doing great. And today we are talking about topic that I think it's very important and also it's brings up some discussion between me and Brian, which is always interesting. So in this episode, we'll be talking about what are emotions, feelings, states, and where is joy in all of that. So in order to get into the topic, we will explain to you what are emotions, what are actually different model of emotions that they are out there, and then you will learn how to get through any emotions, and then we'll get into what exactly feelings are, and we will end up with the states and the exercise of the week, which will include some journaling practice.
Yeah, that's a whole bunch. Sounds really good.
Yeah, so Brian, do you want to start? What are emotions?
Yeah, we're gonna define the emotions. So, yeah, emotions are raw, unprocessed, they're quick, and they're intense. An emotion is meant to really not last longer than about 30 seconds. And if it lasts any longer, well, then we've elevated that into a bit more processing, right? We've got the mind involved and we're holding on to it. So, yeah, they can be quite intense and they're meant to really flow through the body, right? The same with thoughts, right? Really quickly.
Yeah, and what is important to say about the emotions that they are happening in the part of the brain that is not connected to cognitive reasoning. So
Right.
emotional emotions are not meant to be logical.
Right.
You don't need to make up anything out of it. It's just not, they are just simply not meant to be logical. So
Right.
what is super important to know, and yeah, and I think what is the most important, like a differentiator between feelings and states, that emotional emotions are short lasting, and as Brian said multiple times before on the podcast and today, that they should be around 30 seconds.
Right.
And what I found it interesting before researching this episode is that, again, like the scientists and the psychologists cannot agree on emotions, because there are several different models that they are being used. And in my opinion, the most popular that I've seen the most is the basic emotional model made by Paul Ekman. And in this model, there's a set of basic universal emotions that they're experienced by all humans, regardless of the culture. And those six emotions are happiness, sadness, anger, fear, surprise, disgust. And as you know from the movie The Inside Out, I think that was heavily inspired by this model, but instead of happiness, there was joy. So we had an episode before about it, that I see that many cases joy and happiness, it's used as the same word, but it's not exactly the same. So it's quite
Right.
interesting. So this is one of the model. And then there is this Platnick's wheel of emotions, when there are 8 primary emotions arranged in the wheel, and each emotion has a polar opposite. And in this emotion, joy is mentioned, which is like joy versus sadness, trust versus disgust, and fear versus anger, and surprise versus anticipation. And here we had some disagreement with Brian, because he thinks that the fear versus anger is anger is not the opposite to fear, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
what is the opposite to fear in your perspective?
Well, if you're talking about a full spectrum experience, it's opposites, black and white, up and down, left and right, on and off. And so if there's fear, then the opposite is no fear.
So how is it called, like no fear? Like
Uh,
brave, courage?
no, courage is acting in spite of fear. That's what courage and bravery is,
Yeah.
right? I'm still acting even though I understand and I have. I'm going to keep moving forward. Yeah, I think the opposite of fear is joy. That's what I think
Yeah.
it is. right?
Yeah. There is in this one book that there are just two emotions that people are being guided by. It's either fear or love. So I would go that there is one on your radar and everything else it's around it.
Right.
So, but unfortunately, in these models used by scientists and psychologists, this it's not there. But there is one more that I found it fascinating, and it's Pankeep's effective neuroscience theory. And
Mhm.
this is telling about 7 basic emotional systems rooted in the brain circuit. And I was like, okay, what are those? And it's seeking, rage, fear, lust, care, panic, or grief, or play. So as you could hear, all those 3 models,
They're
they're so
totally different.
different.
Yeah, they're
They're
totally
totally,
different.
yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of them are really focused on these base emotions, right? The basic ones. So like anger and surprise and fear and disgust and sadness, right? Yeah, they're also seeming to forget the other end of that spectrum, which is also love and joy. Those are base emotions as well. Yet, see, I've left most of those models or even skipped them because I see things through the eye of energy and frequency. And so those are lower vibrational frequencies, right? So they're saying, okay, the opposite of fear is anger, but both of those are still both like medium to low vibrational frequencies. And so when you hop an octave and you go up in the frequency, then we can get into love and compassion and empathy and at the top it's hallelujah enlightenment. But
Yeah.
and in the middle of those, you're going to have the confidence and the courage to move out of fear into more of those softer, lighter, higher vibrational emotional states.
I do not know when exactly those models were created because, as we know, like this focus on joy, love, and hope, right? On
Right.
those started not even a century ago. So
Right.
it's also depending on the time context because I could see it this being quite out there at the beginning of the 20th century. So it
Yeah,
all
it's
depends on the
controversial.
time, right? It's time, it's all about the time frame. But there is more
Right.
models. I read through 6, but I was like, okay, I will talk about 3 just so we can, yeah, because I liked it how opposite they were. And
Right.
so that was quite interesting. And yeah, I think it's I don't know, I find it fascinating that
Mhm.
first of all, we love to think about ourselves that we are so logical, but
Right.
it's not. We are act on our emotions, which is not in the first place to act on, which
Right.
is also quite interesting. But still, like there is not one model, not one theory, not one definition, right? Because we
Right.
spoke about definitions before
Right.
about emotions, which is, I find it a little bit crazy, but I will definitely dive into the topic. But you wanted to talk about how to get through any emotion. I'm so curious about this one.
Yeah, and just one last thing on those different models as well, because recently I found another model online, which I thought was so interesting, and it's called the Periodic Table of Human Emotions. I found that, and that was really, really interesting because it looks exactly the same, right, as that chart. And then, it's got the main ones in different colors of fear and love, and right, they're in different spectrums. And then it gets into a lot of the idiosyncrasies of emotions like loneliness and boredom and frustration, right? It covers all the gray areas. So that one's a good one too. Maybe we can give links to these
Yeah,
in
or
the
include
description.
photos in the show notes. I think
Right.
that would be so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
We can definitely do it on Substack. If you're a
Yeah.
subscriber, then you will see the photos.
Right. And so, since these emotions can be so heated and come out of nowhere sometimes, right? There's a trigger and we don't know what's behind it. I've been able to find the 5 traits of emotional resilience. There's 5 different traits that will be able to support you in managing any difficult situation into a healthy and constructive way, right? So you can stay in control of your behaviors and your thoughts and your actions and that kind of thing. So we can really maintain that healthy perspective and recover
I'm
quickly.
listening.
Right? We can recover quickly. Right. So those 5 traits are, the first one is, of course, everything starts with this one, right? It's self-awareness. So it's first recognizing by, okay, something's going on, something changed. Ooh, what is this, right? It's using that observer perspective to step out of the emotion so we can take a look at it, right? It's kind of like with a telescope, right? We're taking a look at it instead of being surrounded by it. So self-awareness is first, like, whoa, right? And then the second one is self-regulation. And this is really utilizing the breath in the moment to create some space around this big, highly intensive, is it 30 seconds or is it longer? Because these things can go really big. So really regulating ourselves through deep, slow breathing to calm the nervous system, right? And it can be 4 seconds in, 6 seconds out. Over 60 seconds, you're calm, relaxed. And then the third trait of emotional resilience is optimism or positivity, right? And this is how we can maintain a emotionally resilient state is by being positive. What negative states and thoughts and emotions, what they do is they destroy, and a positive thing builds. So if we want to build and maintain a healthy, positive mind state or health or physical or emotional, right? We want to be on the positive side of that spectrum, because otherwise we're going to destroy whatever that is we're pointing negative energy at. So the fourth one is flexibility, right? So staying open in the flow, right? And if you're talking about spectrums, you've got flexible and you've got rigid on the other side, right? So if you think about it as well as like a river, right? That's flowing and the emotions are just taking us for a ride. We want to stay in the flow, not towards the edges or the banks of the river, because you're either too rigid and you're hitting the side, or you're too loose and then you're flopping all over the place, right? We want to stay flexible in the moment, right? And then ride that river. And then the fifth one is problem solving skills, knowing that you have different pathways of how to solve any situation. And how I think of it, see, again, on frequency. Yeah. And I think it was a quote by Einstein as well. He said, the solution to a problem can't be created in the same state it was created in, if that makes sense, right? The
Yeah,
solution isn't in the same frequency, it's an octave above it, right? So from my understanding is when a problem comes in, the solution comes in along with it at the same moment. It's just, what am I tuning into? So if there's a problem here, great. I just have to know that the solution is here too, and I can tune into that and get problem solving very quickly, right? So yes, those are the 5 different ways to be emotionally resilient through
that's
any
amazing.
type of situation.
Yeah, I absolutely love it because that actually empowers us and the
Right,
listeners to do something, because yeah,
right.
it's impossible to have a life that is full of rainbows and there are no challenges, because
Yeah,
it's all
only
about,
rainbows.
yeah, it's all about how you tackle those challenges. So I had something, I think this week, when I was like, okay, no, I'm like, Julia, come on, take out the paper, 10 solutions. Like, you have a brain, and we spoke about it the
Right,
last time. I think instead of asking yourself, I can't, or saying I can't do it or it cannot be done, when you
right,
start asking yourself how it can be done, that it's already this problem solving skill. So it's and
right,
that is building up on. So that's
right,
empowerment, that the everything is figurable, to
right,
everything we can figure it out.
right.
And so how about feelings? What are feelings then?
If we start with the emotions that are these raw, quick, intense states, then feelings are when you connect the mind to an emotion and you begin to both give it meaning and start processing that emotional state. It becomes a feeling.
Definitely. And that's what makes them long lasting.
Oh boy. Yeah, they go from
Mhm.
short to as
Yeah.
long as we want to hold on to them.
Yeah. So
Right.
it's quite interesting that this is yeah, that they actually require cognitive awareness, which is not the case of
That's it.
the emotions. So I think, oh my God, I just love this movie, the Inside Out, because it's exactly
Mm.
how it is. Do you remember like when they had those marbles and they
Yeah.
were going through, and that
Yeah.
was emotion, right?
Right.
And then there was those shelves of what color emotions are,
Right.
right? And then it was when there was a lot of yellow, that means that Riley, the girl from the movie, was happy. And then when joy and sadness went out, there was a lot of mixed emotions and her state changed. So it
Right.
just, I think they showed it so well, right? That they could choose, and even those little characters inside the head, they could, they had a control about what emotions they are taking out. So
Right.
it's kind of the
Um,
same for us, right? That we are like, oh, this we keep, this we the kind of that it's the shuffling through. So I think it's brilliant, the way how they showed it, and it's explaining so well. So yeah,
yeah.
I mentioned this word already. So what are states in this case?
Well, how I understand it is they're incredibly heightened, yet they can last much longer than a feeling and way longer than an emotion, right? A state can be, let's say, hours, days, months,
Yeah, and
right?
they are definitely more stable, and they could go for the state of the body and state of the
Right.
mind. That, but
Correct.
it's definitely they are more meant to be experienced more. They are more long lasting than emotions.
Right.
That's for sure. Everything is more longer, but
Right.
it's also like about that. Being in a good mind state, right? Or like good
Mhm.
body state, like being healthy, for example. But it doesn't mean that you cannot never be unhealthy, right? It's just it's
Right.
this yeah. So it's definitely more stable. Thankfully, because if it wouldn't be short lasting, then we would be out of the balance, and that would be a bit cuckoo, I would say.
Right. We'd be all over the place. A roller coaster would be
Yeah,
quite
yeah,
intense. So it's nice to have those more
yeah,
stable states. Yeah, and then stages also get it's more of a plateau. But still
yeah,
states can be hard to maintain as well. Like it, which is different from a stage, right? A stage is a real plateau. It's like this is where I am emotionally, and this is like part of my identity. A state let's say could be an alcoholic state or a drug state, and those are very heightened, but then you're going to drop rapidly as well, unless you keep maintaining that state with that external stimulus.
yeah.
So,
But it's also with feelings and emotions. I think that the power of gratitude and joy, what we do at the podcast, on the podcast, that is also about it. That it's based on the law of attraction, that the entire secret is about, the book series, that the more you experience something, the more you attract it in your life. So the
right,
more let's say the more experience of joy you have, the more joy you start to see and experience. So that's
correct,
also a state that this is your choice, because I
right,
guarantee you, like this is, I can guarantee you that if out of the sudden you will start being the biggest pain in the ass for 2 days, and
yeah,
starting to see the worst in people and the worst in any circumstances, you'll have the shitty week.
right,
I can guarantee that
right,
this will happen. But if you will do the opposite, you also have a different result. So
right,
that's the state that you're, yeah, because yeah, it's like this filter that you create, right? And that's,
right.
I think that's also contributes to the state that someone is in.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And science tells us that we're magnets. We create electromagnetic fields. We are an EMF generator. How I think of it is that thoughts are electric and emotions are magnetic. And when you bridge those two with the mind and the heart, well, then here comes this EM field. Right. And so if we like when somebody amazing walks into a room at a party, you can just feel them already, right? They're shining because they have this aura of amazing, right? It's like, oh, I got to talk to them, right? Or
Yeah,
if somebody
yeah,
walks in the room and they're, feeling real shitty and they're, or they're super angry and you feel it from across the room, it's like, oh boy, I want to avoid them, right? Because we are all in each other's EM fields. I mean, we can feel them. And the stronger those fields are, like the stronger the emotion in the moment, that can radiate out. I mean, as far as you can think, I think science says 60 feet or 50 feet, something like that, which is, it's far. But usually
Mm.
it's just arm's length. But then, so anyone close to you, and that even means like the person that you're sleeping next to at night, you're in each other's fields like constantly for that entire night. You're both passed out or wherever the heck you both are.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can definitely relate to that because I got this gift that I'm an empath. Like I can really feel others people emotion, and
Right.
that also for many years I couldn't understand that sometimes everything was okay, but I felt a certain emotion or a feeling that out of the blue. But now
Right.
I just learned how to accept it. But I'm yeah, I can just pick up something from that field and I'm like, okay, what's going on? Because it's
Right.
clearly not mine. So when I
Exactly.
feel something out of the blue, for example, last night I felt really anxious. It was 3 a.m. and I was like, what's going on? And I asked my boyfriend, like, are you anxious? Because maybe it's not mine, So it's
Right.
just so interesting that
Right.
with this field that yeah, it's I find it fascinating how connected we are and
Right.
that we are not even majority of the time aware that the connection is constant and
Right.
it's what are we picking up and also what are we resonating, because if you resonate
Right.
shit you will receive more shit, but if you resonate love you will receive more love. So it's
Right.
be careful what you are projecting out there and also take the responsibility of what you are receiving, because you are responsible for that.
Right.
I'm sorry, but you are like
Right.
it's if you yeah, if like I like it the saying that if you say that everyone idiot around you, then probably you are the if there are 9 idiots around you, you are the 10th idiot, right? That there is
Right.
something that if you point a
You're the
finger on
president.
someone, right, then the three fingers are pointing back at you. So
Right.
this is like fascinating and it takes some
Right.
time to accept, but once you do it, life gets better, but it's
Yeah.
not the easy process.
Yeah. Things start to flow and they become easier, right? Because you're
Yeah.
not resisting and like fighting the flow, right? You're at ease, right? It's like you're floating on the water instead of sinking like a rock, and then all the water's trying to push you, but you're like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah,
So
exactly. And you wanted to talk about the flow state, right?
yeah, so just to take a little bit of a deep dive into that, because over the past few episodes of the interviews that I've been doing, it's like a lot of people are talking about being in flow. So I first wanted to just define what that is. A definition by the founder of the positive psychology movement, and his name is a real fun one, right? It's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, right? His definition is that the flow is a mental state in which a person is performing an activity and they're totally immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement, and enjoyment. And so it's funny because we're talking about joy, and even in the definition, it says enjoyment. So no wonder these interviews are coming out with, boy, I just get in the flow when I'm dancing or writing. It's like it's really connected to the subject matter. So, and it's also something that I support people in with my coaching business, right? To become fully immersed and engaged in what they're doing, right? In an activity where pretty much you let go of everything else, right? So being completely concentrated with a clear goal, and you're also receiving immediate feedback in the experience, right? So I talk to a lot of designers, and so we're like making things or they're coding, and right, that's immediate feedback. And there's also a good, let's say, healthy balance between skill and challenge, right? Because if you don't have enough skill, then you're frustrated, or the challenge is too high, you're frustrated, you won't hit the flow state, right? There has to be a good balance there. And then you also have a sense of control in the process, right? So you are running the show. And then the last two parts of, let's say, understanding flow are some of the most interesting to me, right? It's a loss of self-consciousness, right? So it's like that left brain and the thinking brain kind of just turns off because you're in like automatic mode, and then you lose a sense of time. So
Hmm.
you can look up and it can be 1 minute and it feels like an hour, or it can feel like 20 minutes and there went 3 hours. It's it's a funny way to play with time as well. You can like jump in and out of time. It's it's pretty wild.
I think we're in the flow state when we record the episodes because I just looked at the time and ain't looking good. Ain't looking good. So
Oh, right.
that's our challenge, right? It cannot be too
Right.
easy.
So yeah, then just a couple quick benefits about what it can give to you, right? So it can lead to greater satisfaction, improved performance, and a heightened state of joy and fulfillment. And really, isn't that what everybody wants anyway?
Exactly. And
Right,
what you said about this in the flow state, you have a sense of control, and that's that sense of
right,
control. It's a direct link to a happiness in life, because in many researches that it's not about what you do and whatever, but it's about how much control or perceived control you think you have over your own life. Because many people, they think that I have no choice, which is not true, because you always have a choice. Maybe you're not
well
always
said.
choosing to see it, but so it's all about this control. And of course, it's a lot to do with your circumstances. So, for example, if you have a lot of savings, then you have bigger control over what you choose, right? But if you
Right,
are financially unstable, then perhaps you are being forced to do a job that you don't love, and all
right,
of that. So I find it fascinating that yeah, it's all about how much control you have over your life. And I see people, for example, being in unhappy relationships, not fulfilling, not loving, and all of that, and then you don't understand. I don't have a choice. I have kids, and all these excuses around it. But the truth
right,
is, you do have a choice. You
right,
just make different one. Yeah.
right, right. Yeah, and that's really the superpower that we have when it comes to all of these emotions, feelings, states, and bringing out more joy in our lives too. We always have a choice in every moment. And
And
it simply comes from the self-awareness. That's the first thing.
exactly. And maybe there is someone who is listening this podcast right now, but I just wanted to say that it is okay to feel sad
Right,
after a right choice, the right for you long term. It is okay. Not every single choice will that you will make in your life that will put a smile on your face.
right,
Maybe in the long term, yes, but some choices are really damn hard to make, and they
right,
are heartbreaking. But
right,
you know in the long term that they are that you are acting from the right place, because you are
right,
acting from a place of self-love, not from fear. So
right,
that's what I wanted to say. Maybe
right,
somebody needed to hear that today.
right. Yeah, and life isn't really meant to be easy. So we can't expect,
It is, and it's not. It's like it's both.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but we
The
can't,
habits makes your life easy. That's what I will say.
yes.
But
Yeah,
it's hard to implement the habits.
it can be at first, right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's going to be challenges that come along that we've never faced before.
Yeah.
And that is to be expected, right? Because when you
Exactly.
expect it, then you can bounce back quickly. And
Hmm.
that's really the point. It's like, okay, like I fell down here, but how fast can I get up? Right? And that's
Yeah.
that resilience that you can
And
build up over time.
it's also makes things worth it. For example, this is a very simple
Right.
example. I play with my boyfriend chess, and I think I'm a good chess player. I can play well, and I'm paying attention. But of course, as a business strategist, I think that's required for me, that I can think, like in the strategic way. So it's
Right.
definitely my hobby. It's fulfilling. It's falling into the category of my job. So like I won a few times in the row, and I could feel him getting frustrated, and I'm like, if I would be the same, then you wouldn't feel challenged to play with me, right? You wouldn't
Right.
want to play with me if it would be too easy. And
Right.
then I'm sure that if once he once he start winning again, then it will be more meaningful than it is
Right.
just to, yeah. So
Right.
it's also about the sense of yeah, like why do I like hiking, right? It's because it's hard. It's like
Right.
I can go for a walk, you know, that's easy, but hiking is a different level.
Yeah, and there's growth in those moments as well, right? And
Yeah.
that's why they call it growing pains.
Yeah, and
Right.
growth and perspective.
Right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
growth isn't meant to be easy.
Mm-mm.
Right? If
No.
it was, then the seed wouldn't have to go so dark in the
Yeah.
soil, right?
So, what is the task that we are leaving our lovely listeners with this week?
Right. So the challenge for this week is to take one difficult thing a day and write it down, right? So create a journal for the next 30 days. And you write down one difficult thing a day and how you overcame it using one of the methods uh, we've explained in this episode,
But
right?
this challenge needs to happen in the given day, or it can be from the past.
Take it from the past 24 hours and kind of
Okay.
stick to that simple rule. So it's like an end of the day thing. Okay, I open up the journal, the book, whatever, and I've got my, even if it's just one page that has 30 lines in it. And okay, I'm going to fill this in every day. And then you can reflect at the end of that 30 days and just see how incredibly powerful and strong you are. And look at all those big things that you've dealt with. And also, it's a good reminder of how capable of joy you can really be.
I think we can definitely include the PDF for that one if you want to print it
Oh,
out or make
right.
it on, type it on and on your computer. We can do that. So yeah,
Right.
and so thank you so much, guys. This is second month of the Joy Link, right? You can support us. I think we are already on Spotify. Subscribe us on Substack and get more exclusive content, and you can see the photos in the show notes and more. And also, if you love what we're doing, you have a chance to get us coffee. buymecoffee.com/thejoylink. We always appreciate that. So thank you so much. And we'll be back next week and on Friday with the interview.
And we will see you in the next one.
Bye.
Right. Ciao.